Welcome back to the Betsperts Golf DFS Show here at none other than BetspertsGolf.com. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle. Back today, no longer sick, which is very important for this Genesis Open. None other than PGA Splits himself and good friend, Ron Klos. Ron, our first show together for the 2023 PGA season. I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's been a while. We've missed you. I know you have all your NFL stuff. We all enjoy watching you there. But yeah, super excited for this week. We have a world-class field once again playing on what I think is one of the best strategic courses in the world. And then you throw Tiger into the mix, and then we kind of have an elite viewing experience these next few days.
Byron, of course, we recorded together last week. You were on top of the Keith Mitchell fade, as he did make the cut, but was not in most mid to high stakes winning lineups, at least the tournaments I was in, given that he didn't really compete over the last 2 days. Byron, how's it going?
Good. Thanks. And you, John. Matt Kuchar, myself, didn't really, if we take hole number 9 out of the equation, everything looks great for him. I think he played it like 5 over par for the week. So, well, next time we'll remember to tell Matt not to play hole 9, but everything's going good, my friend. Good to have you back here with us.
We cashed the Jason Day first round leader. And to me, that's all that mattered because we got to play golf for everyone, including all the subs, the rest of the week. And before we begin, I actually want to start there because quick reminder, the betting subscriptions at 4for4.com open this week. And as you know, if you sign up for 4for4.com in the next 2 weeks, you now all of a sudden, I fought corporate, they didn't listen. You now all of a sudden get a free subscription to Betsperts Golf as well. So if you've been on the fence and joining us, whether it be the customizable tool in the background we have at betspertsgolf.com, which you can basically create your own model with for either upcoming courses, long-term courses, major DFS for underdog. Also, our betting picks. Noonan has already hit 2 outrights in the new calendar year of 2023. All of Ron's stuff that he talks about on the show is available there. Just remember, you can now get that for free, $200 value by signing up for 4for4, and you get both of them. So if you've been on the fence about joining us, quick reminder that now is the time. And with that, gentlemen, I want to begin because this year's Genesis Invitational at the Riviera Country Club is not only being held just inside the Palisades area, but as we know, is hosting every single eligible PGA Tour golfer and the top 60 minus Aaron Wise, Chris Kirk, and I believe Brendan Steele was a late scratch on Tuesday. So you can correct me if I'm wrong there, if I've missed anything, Ron. But as we go and start building lineups for this course in particular, what are the most important metrics you're weighting when you start sifting through categories and stats and looking into the ideal type of golfer you want to roster?
Yeah, there were a few withdrawals. I know Maverick McNeely was another one. Aaron Wright is in the field. So he's actually, we'll talk about him later. He's someone that I kind of like this week. But yeah, just kind of the stats here. Off the tee, it's really not a long course, just over 7,300 yards. Kind of instead of length, this course relies on, there's a lot of angled dog legs. There's narrow fairways. These are, compared to years past this year, it says they're only 27 yards wide on average, which would be the 5th most narrowed fairways on tour. So golfers are going to be challenged in that way. But on the flip side, you have this Kikuyu rough, which is not long. It's only about 2 inches on average. But players who do not have experience on that type of rough and that type of grass, it could pose some challenges. So I'm definitely siding with course history this week and players who have had at least some success here in the past. You have very challenging POA greens. Now this week, it's a little bit similar to Torrey Pines South. They're very fast, running about 12.5 on the stip meter. And I think that's going to level the playing field somewhat. Don't think you have to be a great putter here. Of course, another thing I like to do is look at guys who have played here in the past, like an Adam Scott, who has just a tremendous putting history on these greens. So that's another way you can kind of look at, as far as putting splits. But yeah, you're looking for shot makers. Very challenging around the greens, mostly from the bunkers. These bunkers are deep. They're just in these perfect locations where golfers are going to be challenged to kind of almost aim for the middle of the green because there's just so much danger, whether it's the bunkers, whether it's the sloping of the greens. So yeah, short game is important this week. And it's not necessarily as difficult scrambling, but you're just going to have so many more shots around the green because the GIR percentage, greens in regulation, is one of the lowest on tour. So everybody's going to miss greens. And that's where you can get some guys like a Victor Hovland, a Colin Morikawa, who can kind of separate themselves this week if they're able to hit the ball close to the pin.
And as we continue to see the development of your new place, Ron, I'm definitely going to ship you some golf paintings for your background. I have like Pinehurst. I have Pinehurst Green Book as well. You could just like hang it somewhere right here. Like I'll send you some help. Byron, though, I think one of the key aspects Ron hit on was thin fairways, because I came into this week, and tell me if I'm wrong here, thinking initially that I'm looking for accurate drivers. And of course, I'm weighing that metric, but also in my model, I made sure to get the bomb and go types, because I think as long as we can get a long driver and then someone who is accurate, has a close proximity to the hole, both from the bunkers, as Ron mentioned, bunker-laden course, and from the rough, I think that's another player I'm very interested in having, whether he's wild off the tee or not. So what are your thoughts here, what you're looking for the Genesis Invitational?
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page. And I think one way you can get a little different is not particularly for the guys that are up top that you're looking to win the tournament. But if you're looking for a guy to finish inside the top 20, I'm okay going away from the fact that he's going to need distance, as long as he's got elite around the green skills. That to me is going to be a way I'm going to try and differentiate myself a little bit this week. Shout out to Matt Kuchar. I think he's definitely going to be in the player pool once again. I think, that's the rule here. You got to be able to handle it around the greens. 58% of the greens get hit here, which is ridiculously low, like Ron was saying. So that's just kind of my vibe this week.
And one more thing I took from your course preview, Ron, which I always tell people to go read to start their weeks at betspertsgolf.com, is that this course also hosts the toughest overall greens in regulation rate at 56.7%. So that proximity to the hole on long irons, on approach shots, certainly important, especially from the rough at this course. Let's begin, though, at the top, because there are 4 golfers in the 5-digit range on DraftKings this week. And in my opinion, I've tried, unless you can confidently find 2 1% plays in the 1% or in the low 6K range, which we'll get to that range at the very end of the show. In my opinion, it's near impossible to roster 2 of said 4. So you're really picking between 1 and then deciding which range, like high 9Ks, to fade after that. So let's start at the top, and let's begin with the player you are highest on among the 4, Ron, between John Rahm at the top, Scheffler right behind him at 10-7, Rory at 10-5, and JT at 10-1.
Yeah, if I had to choose one, I'm going to Rory this week. I just think coming off last week, he was kind of, having played overseas, maybe getting his legs under him a little bit. But I think we're going to see Rory at his best this week. Course history, for his 4 last trips here, he's got 3 top 10. So, he's got the length off the tee. I think kind of related to what Byron and what we were talking about, the proximity of the hole being so tough, he hits it higher than almost anyone on tour. And so, whether he's in the rough, whether he's in the fairway, I don't think it matters, because the height that he gets on those approach shots, it's going to land softer compared to other players. And so that kind of gives him an advantage on a course like this that, depending on precipitation, I've heard reports that the greens might not be as firm as they usually are, but these are some of the firmest greens that they play on tour here. And so I just think his ability to kind of tee to green, and then his putting has been so good. So I don't think you can go wrong with Rory. I'd probably go JT as my number 2 here, just because he seems to be trending in the right direction with his irons again. And he looks like he, maybe more than any of these guys, he is, I don't know what the word is, almost desperate for another victory, because he has a one in a while here. And so I think he'd be my number 2 here.
And what about you when looking through these 4 golfers, Byron?
It's so good to have you back, Ron, because here we go. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that I'm not a fan of Justin Thomas this week, especially the fact that I was all over him last year. He was doing the exact same stuff leading into the tournament. The next thing, he just doesn't have it when he gets to the top of the leaderboard. I just don't trust him as a closer. Anything he does has to be from behind, and I don't want a guy that's going to have to win from behind. So I'm out on him. Scotty Scheffler looking like the lost child in the top of the range here between Johnny and Rory, who's also just come off a win. And we know that Scotty Scheffler's not shy to play some good golf right after a win. I think when he gets rolling, you want to get involved with him. He's also got pretty decent course history here, not the same as the other 2, but we know when he's playing the best golf he's doing, it's really tough to beat the guy. He just looked in absolute control last week. And I think this is going to be a definite golf course that he can shine at. He's got the distance off the tee. His around the green game is one of the best, especially out the rough. Love what he does out the rough. And I think his course management is imperative, and he's going to do great things this week. I think he's my favorite, just especially if he's going to be the lowest owned in this range.
That is unfortunate because my goal was to dwindle down the 10K range for everyone. And my favorite is actually John Rahm. I don't have an early view. I don't have an early glimpse of ownership. As you mentioned, Byron, you think Scheffler's the one who gets lost here. And that happened last week as well. Scheffler was around 17 and 19%. Rahm checked in at 17%. And then I looked up and we had Morikawa, who was a great play, but missed the cut, in at 23%. So it worked out well. And I'm curious between those two at the top, Rahm and Scheffler. But right now, if you told me to choose one, although both grade out so well and all the metrics we're trying to look at for Riviera, Rahm in particular, not worried about him ever off the tee. And then also top 5 and radius to the hole from the rough on tour this year, one of only 5 golfers as well with a 76% greens in regulation rate. Even his close game right now is something that's just playing so well. So overall, I think Rahm is where I start. But the issue is, in doing that, Ron, then it really limits the number of high 9K players you can roster. And so we're going down the list and looking at, in that range from 9 to 8, Xander at 9.9, Max Homa at 9.7, Tony Finau, Sung J M, Colin Morikawa, of course, Sam Burns, and Patrick Cantlay. And if you ask me right now on Wednesday, I believe Max Homa and Colin Morikawa, maybe not in that order, are going to be the 2 highest rostered in this range. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that in a bit, Byron. But knowing that Morikawa at 9.3, I think will be the highest of all of them, actually. Where do you start building, or who do you start looking at in this tier?
I got 2 guys down here, and I think this is a great week. And there's a lot of guys actually who missed the cut last week who are just really good bounce back candidates. And, hoping some ownership gets lower. But, for me down here, I'm starting with Patrick Cantlay. I was on him last week. I just think that kind of when you look overall, like when he opened betting odds, for example, 30-1, I couldn't believe it. He's one of the best players in the world, tee to green. Kind of one of the big things I'm looking for this week is players who are just strong all around. And he definitely fits that bill. And when you throw in, he's a really good putter on POA. And the fact that he loves playing on the West Coast, and he actually called this, one of his top 3 favorite courses in the whole world. So he's my guy down here that I'm going to be starting with more than anyone. And I think Xander Schauffele kind of fits that bill too, kind of just doesn't have any weaknesses. He started to come to life recently. Kind of when you look, 10 strokes ball striking he gained last week in Phoenix. So I really like where his game is trending. His short game was a little sketchy, but that's usually one of his strengths. So I'm not worried about that at all. So for me, my 2 guys is Cantlay, it's Schauffele. And there's, it's hard because there's guys you're going to have to fade here. But kind of what I like to do in weeks like this is I like to not fade as many guys as I typically would because it's such a strong upper tier field. And, there's going to be some guys down low I'm going to have to take some stronger stands on. But it's really hard to narrow it down. But those would be my 2 in this range.
And when you're looking this range, Xander, Byron, and Cantlay, as Ron noted, are both 2 terrific picks, given that they're basically in this range pivots from Morikawa and Homa. But what are your thoughts on the overall 9 to 8 tier?
Yeah, I think it's perfectly acceptable to start your builds in this range. We've got proven winners here, especially Max Homa and Xander, and even Sam Burns is an interesting look here because he showed a little bit of a flash last week. And when Sam Burns' driver gets rolling, that's when you want to fire on him. And I think it started cooking towards the weekend last week in Phoenix, and he's looking like he's going to be one of the least owned guys in this range. And I'm totally okay almost throwing 3 of these guys into a lineup and kind of going down all into the 6K range there for 1 or 2 dudes. But Max Homa to me is just the most, and I hate to say this, but he's a smash play for me because the course history here is phenomenal. And he did all of that stuff before he is the Max Homa that he is now. He is playing some of the best golf of his life. I think he's peaking and still going up at the same time. I don't think he's done getting better. Going to a venue like this where his last 3 starts have been a win, a T5, and a T10. What about that don't you like? at a venue like this, and he's going to be nice and affordable in this range. So I'm all over Max Homa. I love Xander. I love the around the green game for him here too. And I think I might be pivoting to Sam Burns a little bit as a sneaky play in this range.
It does seem like Tony Finau may get, and Sung Jae for that matter, may get lost a hair in that range too. And M has been playing spectacular the past month. I want to move on though beyond Cantley, because the next 4 or 5 golfers, like I'll actually want to segment the 8s, because you look at Victor Hovland, Cameron Young, Willie Z, Jordan Spieth. Like those guys alone are going to naturally get ownership. It's almost like they shouldn't be priced in the high 8s. So Ron, what about those 4 individual players? Where do you sit right now on them? Especially when Spieth, he had a bad round there to close, but overall was surging on the weekend.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but even when we get lower into this entire 8K range, like the pricing down here is just so soft. Like I was messing around, and you could actually just fit your entire 6-man team right here. Like there's so many good guys down here. Starting with Hovland, he's kind of shown himself to be a really big course history guy, because, there's certain places down south, in the Caribbean on those islands, Mayakoba, he just year after year, look at this course. He's played here twice. He's got 2 top 5s. And so, I think his ability to kind of separate himself with his approach play is a big factor for me this week again. And I think he's just way underpriced. I know he has been kind of struggling, very inconsistent, which is probably why his price is lower. But at 8.9K, I don't think you can go wrong with him at all. I think Cameron Young is another interesting bounce back guy. He didn't look good last week, but this course just kind of fits him so well. His length off the tee, his short game has been struggling lately, and so that's my big concern is his around the green play. And then Zalatoris, there's whispers about injury concerns as far as, why on earth would he not play last week? And so it's hard, because that's the struggle for me, because, I did a little research yesterday on, players on strong field events who are also playing on tough courses. And that's so Riviera, tough course. This is a very strong field event. And he was by far and away the best player on tour in those types of conditions as far as raising his baseline. And so he always shows up in these events, but, it's like, you don't want to get stuck playing him if he's not 100% or if he could withdraw. So that's my struggle with him. But yeah, definitely love Victor and Young would be my second guy here.
Just segmenting those, Byron, are what I want to talk about right now and your thoughts, because as Ron mentioned, I think we should reserve the low 8Ks for an entirely different conversation by themselves, because there are so many plays there.
Yeah. So where do you want to cut it off here? At Tom Kim?
Let's go ahead and cut it off at Tom Kim. I think the gap between him and Fitzpatrick is going to be quite large. Yes.
Cool. So I'm all over Tom Kim this week, especially if we're going to get a guy that's won twice on tour. I know it's going to a golf course that's not necessarily a perfect fit for him, but he's going to be sitting under 10% ownership this week. And he's got an elite skill set when it comes to approach. And when he's putting and short game gets cooking, he can really be the best in the world when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I'm obviously a big Tom Kim homer. So I know Ron's looking at me and saying like, what's going on here? But I think he's going to be a great leverage play, because the things he can get up to are just intangibles too. Like when he gets in these moments, he had a horrific week last week after Sony. He had the same situation, bounced back with a T6 at Amex the next event. So I'm totally okay dealing with him. And he's got elite accuracy, John. He's going to be one of these guys that can absolutely hit it in the fairway more often than everyone else. And then from the fairway, he's going to have absolute control into the greens and probably hit a lot more greens, because he's one of the best approach players in the field. So if things go right for Tom Kim this week, that's what you're banking on here, right? Is upside. So Tom Kim's upside, I think it can happen, although the path isn't necessarily as traveled as many others in this range. And then I want to just fade Cameron Young. I can't handle the short game, so that's just easy for me. Victor Hovland's approach play recently, also not at that ownership. I can't handle that, can't stomach it. I'm totally okay going with Jordan Spieth, though. I think what he's shown us recently makes a lot of sense. He's a wizard around the greens, too. He's one of the best when it comes to chipping and putting. That's something I'm going to lean on. He's also pretty good off the tee when it matters.
Kim, of course, a good option, given that I would expect him to be probably the lowest rostered among that top group of players. But when you go right beyond him to Matthew Fitzpatrick, Hideki Matsuyama, Justin Rose, Adam Scott, who's going to be one of the highest roster golfers all weekend. That's when we're start talking about leverage options, Ron, off of Adam Scott, given that, as we know, golf DFS is the most volatile, which makes it the most fun of any sport. So go ahead and present the bull case for Adam Scott and why he's going to be the highest roster player in cash games and why you would play him in this tournament despite his ownership.
Yeah, so I have him at around 15% right now. And of course,
Ooh.
you know, we all know. What do you have him higher?
Yeah, I have him quite high. I could be off. It's only Wednesday. I do have him quite high though.
Yeah, we'll get a better picture as time goes. And again, these things happen where guys just get steamed, which definitely could happen to him. But you know, he's the ultimate course horse here. You know, he's got 2 wins here, including once in the last 3 years, 5 top 11s since 2016. He just absolutely comes to life on these challenging greens. Like when I actually looked at, you know, his past 7 trips here, he's gained 24.6 strokes putting in those 7 trips. So that's just an amazing amount for a guy who, you know, he is pretty good on the greens, but these greens are not easy. Most players tend to struggle on these greens. And so, you know, he just has a real comfort level here. His price isn't going to kill you. So you definitely are going to have to get different in other places. And, you know, for me, there's 2 other guys sitting right here who I just love, who ownership is pretty low on. And one of them is Fitzpatrick. You know, I think this is a great time to jump back on him. You know, he was kind of average again last week, but he's one of the best players in the world on tough scoring courses. You know, we saw what he did at the U.S. Open. You know, he remains rock solid off the tee. One of the best short games in the world, and it's just that approach game that has kind of left him. So, you know, I'm kind of banking on the tough conditions, the course, his ability to scramble, and I think that plays this week. And so I'm on him. And you could almost say the same thing for Hideki. You know, he's kind of been wild, even though his last 2 events, he's kind of been positive again off the tee. But he does kind of have these wild spurts, and this course really isn't going to hurt you that much off the tee if you're wild. There's no water. There's no real hazards. And he's, again, another one of the best short game players in the world. So Hideki, and similar to Scott, again, a guy who's been actually on fire with his putter recently. I think in his last 7 of his last 8 measured rounds, he's been positive. And so, you know, I just think at these values, you know, Fitzpatrick and Matsuyama are going to be in a whole lot of my lineups.
I did not even mention, I glossed over Tyrrell Hatton and Jason Day. And those are 2 of my favorites in this range as well. I already have a 40-1 outright ticket on Day for this week as we continue that surge since he's been positive in strokes gained, both putting and total in his last 3 events. I think he's trending in the right direction, given his long game and accuracy for this particular course. So I'm very heavy on Day yet again. But Byron, what about you in this range?
Yeah, I think the Day thing is a concern when it comes to how he's played you in the past. Even when he was playing well, I think that was a bit of an issue. So the around the green play for him is a bit of a concern, and that has been an issue even leading up to this event. So I'm out on that. But you got to ask me these questions before you ask Ron, because he keeps stealing my thunder now. Now that we're in the 8K range, he's doing everything that I want to do. And I'm all on Hideki Matsuyama this week. I think if you miss it, you can miss these fairways as long as you miss them on the right side, right? The left or the right, depending which way the dog leg goes. And I think Hideki can handle that. He's not super accurate off the tee, but he's got lots of length, and he's incredible around the greens, man. He's one of the best around the greens too. And Ron said also the putter has just been cooking with gas lately. And then Fitzy, exactly the same concept there, just with less elite iron play, but more elite around the green play. So that's totally okay. You know, approach play here is de-emphasized by about 6% compared to tour average. So I'm okay taking a guy that doesn't necessarily have the best approach play and knowing that he's going to rely on the around the green play to do most of his scoring, which I think is going to be completely fine. I do have one question for you guys, though. Do you think it's going to be minus 17 that wins this thing again, or is it going to be closer to minus 11? Do you think they've realized that you can just bomb it off this course and deal with the consequences thereafter, or were the conditions not as difficult last year?
I mean, I think it's still going to be kind of in that 15 under range. And I think last year was one of the highest, strongest fields that they've had at Riviera. And so I think even this year it's even stronger. So I think when you have more good players playing, you know, I think the scoring is just naturally going to be lower. I don't think that takes away from the challenge of the course at all. But I think it's going to be probably somewhere around 15 under again, in my opinion.
And I noticed in your
lineups.
And right now, if you look at the weather also, we don't really have split tiers. Like last week, I know we went into lineup lock, seeing that afternoon wind that was coming in for the second wave of players. Doesn't look like we're going to have that right now outside of the usual winds in California. So overall, I don't think that's going to be a deciding factor in the course score. So that's really good. Also, I want to put in for Tyrrell Hatton as maybe, I don't know what you have him at right now, Ron, but an overlooked option here in 8Ks and even leverage off of Adam Scott at 8-1, because if you can count the green flags going well for him right now, Hatton leads the tour, ding, and proximity to the hole, ding, from the rough, ding, from 175, 200 yards out, ding. And as you know, you wrote the average approach shot at Riviera comes from 176 yards out. 75% of approach shots come from 150 plus out. So if we're talking about a player who's been accurate in approach on his long irons, Hatton fits that mold. So I definitely don't mind getting an accurate driver for this course, especially since I'm trying to build my tournament lineups right now around Adam Scott. And when I do that, Byron, as I'm giving you a chance to tee off here, I start looking at leverage options in the 7K range, as that's where we move to. And I actually want to begin with Ricky Fowler as one of my favorite plays, as worrisome as that may be, because if you look, like, he's now gained strokes on approach in 6 consecutive events. The putter has been a little bit here and there, but in the last 2 big events, the Farmers Insurance Open and this past week at the Waste Management Open, over a stroke gain putting. So I think he's actually hitting it, coming around in a short game at the perfect time. And right now, even given his above average distance, it works out well for this course, in my opinion, to where his game is at. So I'll be heavy on Fowler as a pivot from Scott. But what about your thoughts in the 7K range?
Absolutely. I think Ricky is going to be really fun to watch going forward. It would be really great to get him back in the mix for sure. One of my favorite plays, and they're both sitting right next to each other, is Seamus Power. We mentioned that the field difficulty, the field strength, and the course difficulty are both ramped up this week. If you take a look at what he did last year in the majors, the 3 majors on US soil, the guy was, I think, he made all 3 cuts, and a few of them were inside the top 20, I believe. And he's just really good on these difficult tracks. And he's just one of these guys that if you look at any of his metrics, it doesn't make sense. But if you look at his scoring stats, he gets bogey avoidance, and his birdie percentages and par 5 scoring are all pretty solid things. And I love how he adapts to these tough major-like atmospheres. And then right beneath him there, a bit more of a popular play, but a guy that suits the 3 check boxes that we're going to go Bing, yeah. Distance off the tee, Bing, Taylor Montgomery. Elite iron play, not necessarily there, but de-emphasized, yeah, that's okay. Elite around the green play and probably the best putter in the field, Bing, Bing. Like, let's rock and roll with Taylor Montgomery. Yeah, it's $7,600.
And
he had a bit of a
if you want to continue that, played like shit last week, thus lower ownership. Bing.
Bing. Exactly. So that's what I was about to say. So Bing, Bing, Bing. Let's go Taylor Montgomery. Mix him in with some Seamus Power there. I love it. So that's what I'm eyeing out in the top of the 7Ks.
Ron, when you're looking over this range, knowing that this is how we fit in a couple of those 10K, a high 9K guy, where do you start looking at here?
So this is the tough range for me. I'm still struggling with kind of narrowing down who I really like here. I completely agree with Byron on Montgomery. I just think, just from a talent perspective, just what he's shown so far at 7,600, like he's probably one of my top guys down here. I think Sahith, I think California kid, he's made the cut here both times he's played. I think just the volatility that he brings, he's a great player from the rough. He's shown pretty decent touch around the greens. Inconsistent putting, but I think just his upside here. And for me, that's kind of what I go to when I'm kind of stuck, when I'm just not sold on anyone. Okay, who's got upside? And when you look ownership, like, there's really nobody in this range other than Wyndham Clark and Ricky who are anything above 10% as far as what I see right now. So you can kind of get creative down here. You can mix and match a little more, which is probably what I'll do. I do like Clark. I'm not as high on Fowler. For me, I want to see it a little longer before I jump in on him. Keegan Bradley, surprisingly, I thought he'd be higher owned. I have him right around 9-10% right now. Doesn't have a great track record here, but he looks like he's on top of his game at the moment. And then you can't forget about Adam Hadwin. It's so solid lately. Loves playing on the West Coast. And so I think he's a really kind of consistent type guy to fit into your lineup, maybe finish top 30 in that range. So, yeah, in this upper 7.5, those are my guys. I usually would love Corey Connors, but there's two guys here, Corey Connors and Brian Harmon, who have just horrible course histories. And I can't click those buttons with course history that bad for those two guys.
Makes a lot of sense. Adam Hadwin also very high in my pool, has gained strokes in 9 consecutive events now. I'm hoping he gets lost since he's not a bomber. He's more of an accurate low driver. But that's okay because, again, I'm profiling these players for my lineups in 2 different roles, the bomb and go, and then, of course, the accurate methodical drivers. And Hadwin definitely fits the latter mold. And my opinion is you get down lower than that, to the low 7Ks, high 6Ks, like the bottom feeding range. It gets a little tougher because it's almost like Byron. Like last week we talked about with Kevin Tway, Mark Hubbard. I ended up on EVR in some lineups. I knew I had to sacrifice something. And to me, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like we do have to again sacrifice something. Like I think Cam Davis stands out, but boy, his like it's not just one thing. It's the short game. It's the round the green, the putting has been horrible the last month. And so that would be a concern. But on approach, at least, and historical scrambling, Cameron Davis is someone I would usually like even flag plant in this range. So I still take a chance. But where are you looking at here? Thinking that, okay, well, this person is not good at this one thing, but we can close our eyes because they're so good in another thing.
Perfect. I've got 4 names for you. Yeah. One of them is Russell Henley.
Take them all from Ron.
Let's go. Ron, I'm stealing your boys, but I know Ron, he's got other guys too. Russell Henley for me, one of those accurate drivers, not necessarily the longest in the world, but he's really good around the greens. And he typically putts a lot better, I believe, on POA. And by better, I mean he's a field average putter now on POA versus sucking it up on all other surfaces. He's one of my favorite players here. He's got great course history. He's actually finished inside the top 30 of the last 3 times he's played this event. I know it's a bigger event now, but let's see what he can get up to. Tommy Fleetwood is a guy he's the best around the green player in the field. Like statistically, over the last 1.5 years, he is the best around the green. And to me, that's very important this week. He's also played back home in South Africa on the Riviera Country Club, which is Kikuyu grass. And he's won that event twice over the last 5 years. This is Kikuyu grass again. I love Tommy Fleetwood on that Kikuyu grass. He's also got great course history. Billy Horschel, another one of these guys in this lower range here. Doesn't have the distance, but one of the best scramblers on tour. We can also see him do some of the stuff that he did there at the Murfield Village at, I don't even remember the course's name, but when he won the Memorial. That's a very similar kind of a golf course, in my opinion. The rough not as penal, but he's a very good driver of the golf ball. And then Matt Kuchar. Sign me up for Matt Kuchar again. The course history here, if you go back more than 2 or 3 years ago, Matt Kuchar seems to be playing better golf now. If you take a look at his course history like 2 or 3 years back, things start rolling nicely at Riviera for Matt. He's got, a pretty decent course history, and he's got elite scrambling skills. We know that's his thing, and he's played here lots of golf. He knows exactly what's needed at this venue, and I think his game's starting to come together.
Ron, I actually want you to begin as well with, of course, Tiger Woods talk, who is in this area. Because remember, last time we did this and Tiger Woods was playing, we did have some bets out there to make the cut, and PointsBet has an entire section, honestly. Tiger Woods top 5 odds, top 10 odds, T20 odds. But remember, last time at the, I'm blanking now which tournament it was, but we at least knew he had course history in his favor, knowing he was playing one that you had to rack your brain and just understand. It didn't really come down to like how well you were playing. You just had to know where to hit it. And Woods had that. And because of that, remember, when you got to mid and higher stakes DFS, his ownership shrunk the higher you got because people did not believe he could make the cut. He didn't end up in winning lineups, but he was actually a good contrarian play in higher stakes fields, but not in lower stakes. So where do you see Tiger Woods coming in this week? And does it matter at all because he fit this course well anyhow?
So yeah, with Tiger, so I think you're talking about St. Andrews, where he lost 8.6 strokes, missed that cut. Yes.
as
And
he
then
drug his leg around on day
Yep.
3.
And then
He made the cut, correct?
no, he missed the cut. He missed it. He made the cut at the Masters 3 months earlier.
That's what we're
Finished-
talking about. Okay, yes,
And
that's what I'm
Southern
talking about.
Hills.
Yeah.
Yep.
Too, I
So
think.
yeah, so the Masters, he again didn't look good necessarily in either one, and of course, just he's going to be really rusty again this week. Riviera is not the easiest walk. There's a lot of different elevation changes that are very subtle, and so like kind of like you're getting at, this wasn't a course he ever played really well at, even when he was in his prime. So yeah, I'm all about just sitting back, and if other people want to play Tiger, hey, I'm definitely rooting for him. But yeah, I'm not. I guess I haven't looked yet as far as targeting him in active matchups. But yeah, as far as DFS goes, I am staying away, far away. So that's my opinion on him. As far as this range, there are a couple guys down here I'm kind of planning some stronger flags on. One of them is a guy who I would never have thought would be this low in this type of an event, and that's Shane Lowry. Has he looked good lately? No, he's looked very bad, but a month ago, he had a really good performance in Abu Dhabi. So, I think this course is much better for him than last week in Phoenix, where it was maybe a little more of a birdie fest. I see him around the greens here, one of the best in the world. Approach game is really good. Again, struggling, yes, recently, but I just kind of see this course fitting him as far as the conditions. He tends to thrive on these tougher courses. And so I really like Lowry at 7,400. I completely agree about Fleetwood with Byron. I think kind of these Euro type players, you even look at Alex Noren, I think is a real good play as well. I mean, you don't need these guys to win. They get you a top 20 at this value of a price, and that's all you need really. So I like those three, and even going down a little bit, I continue to play Thomas Dietrich. I think he's a world-class player. He hasn't broken through for a win or anything yet, but he just has so much experience playing on the DP World Tour, playing on all different types of courses. And so he's kind of one of the guys I'm making an exception for. He hasn't played here before, but I just think his game is so strong all around, and just that experience that he brings. And so at 7,100, he's going to be a guy that I'm pretty heavily invested on as well.
Begin us with dumpster diving, Byron, because as you know, if you start in like the 10K range, you're going to need some help, maybe even two of these guys. So I don't know if you see two at all, but what are some players that stand out?
Yeah, I've got a few that you're just going to sprinkle these guys in and the end of your lineups to try and round out if you're going with a nice balance build up top. James Hahn and Sam Ryder sitting at $6,700 a piece. They got two very different types of skill sets here. James Hahn has typically played very good golf at this venue. He's got one of the 20th best course history in my model. He's $6,700, and then Sam Ryder is actually kind of establishing himself as actually a dominant golfer on tour. He's not necessarily one of these guys that just holes out from random places to make the cut. Now he's actually been in contention a few times and showing himself as a good golfer. So he's $6,700 too. He's kind of affordable. Matthew Neesmith has got great course history here too, and a lot of people were on him heading into a few events recently. Kind of when the wind blows, I think you don't want to play him that much. But as you mentioned earlier, looks like we're going to have a bit more calmer conditions this week. And Matthew Neesmith, in my opinion, appeals to me from that department. He's actually pretty good around the greens. He's a good driver of the golf ball typically, and when it comes to just hitting good iron play, that's exactly what you're looking for. And then Ches Reavie. What on earth is Ches Reavie doing with 2 top 10s in his last 3 starts here? Ches Reavie, folks, with 2 top 10s at this venue. So I'm not entirely sure how he managed to do that, but if he can rattle off a third one, I'll take a top 20 from Ches Reavie at $6,400.
Ron, your favorites in this range?
Yeah, so I think we'd be amiss not to mention Patrick Rodgers here. His ownership, and I usually would not play a guy who's 12% owned. That's way down here, but I think his ability, his length off the tee, combined with his putting on these surfaces, again, the approach weakness, like Byron said, gets kind of mitigated a little bit at this course, and so I think he's a guy who's a really perfect fit as far as you're trying to fit that last guy into your lineup. Patrick Rodgers has great course history here. So love him. But yeah, as far as the 6K, again, I'm trying to stay above this level. But for me, Luke List, and when I get down here, I'm relying on 2 things, either course history or does this player play well in strong field events in difficult conditions. And so Riviera, again, Luke List fits the bill here. He plays his best golf in tougher conditions where he doesn't have to, sink 25 birdie putts. We all know the putting game is not good. But, in a course like this where, putting kind of the field gets leveled a lot, in my opinion, because the greens are so fast. So I love Luke List at 6,800. And my other guy is going to be Aaron Rai, 6,600. Compare him to Dietrich a little bit just because they both played around the world. They have so much experience playing overseas where, kind of you get into these tough events and it just doesn't faze them. They have that experience. And so I like Aaron Rai as my second guy down here.
Byron, the one player you want to be overweight on in DFS this weekend and your favorite bet.
Oof, my favorite bet is going to be a Tom Kim top 20 at plus 190. That's on FanDuel. And then a guy that I'm going to be overweight on, it's going to be Max Homa.
Ron, same questions.
So bet-wise, and I don't know if this is still there or not, but yesterday Adam Scott for a top 40 was plus 105 on FanDuel. Again, he was, if you want to get a little more aggressive, it was plus 170 for a top 30. So yeah, I'm just really confident in Adam Scott, and you don't have to worry about ownership when you're making your bets there. So, I love that one. And as far as ownership, I'm going to be way over the field on Matt Fitzpatrick. He's my guy this week.
I will be way over the field on a couple guys, but I think starting with John Rahm is what I want to do. And that may force me to ignore the 9K range entirely, which is a fade in itself and also terrifying. But I think I may try that on for size, especially in single entries and 3 max, and see how that fits ahead of Thursday morning. That's where I'm at right now. Okay. A new practice I'm hearing to finish the show. And that is we take turns drafting a lineup to highlight a few players that we are on and fading. So how do we begin this, Ron?
Yeah, so we're each going to take one player from each tier, going all the way down, and then that last 6th player, whatever money we have left over. So again, basically we're building a DraftKings lineup, and I believe we're in one of the $12 single entries on there. So I will start since I believe Byron and I pretty much dominated you the first time we did this. Is that correct, Byron?
Did you dominate me with all 6 of my guys missing the cut?
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
That was a tough week for both of us, actually. But
it was a disaster. Yeah.
Yes. So I'll start. So my 10K guy, I'm going to go with Rory McIlroy at 10.5.
I'll go Scotty Scheffler at 10.7.
Let's just all take our guys then. I'm going wrong.
Yeah. There we go.
There we go. All right. So John, we'll snake it around now, John.
It is now my pick. I will go Homa. That's who I have the most confidence in the 9K range.
All right. I'll go.
I'm sorry, Byron.
No, that's fair. I should have gone John Rahm then, just to spite you. But I will go with, and I know I never really mentioned him that much, but I'm kind of liking Tony Finau this week, too.
Sure.
All right. I will take my guy, Patrick Cantlay, at 9K flat. And bringing it back down to stick with my convictions, Matthew Fitzpatrick at 8,300.
Okay, and then I'm going to go Tom Kim at $8,500.
Oh, okay. I'll take Decky at 8.2. That's great. I am also very high on Matsuyama. That's where I looked for outright market. Like when I first started researching this course, he is the player that stood out heavily. I also like Hatton a lot. I will be overweight on him in DFS, but yes, I like Decky quite a bit. And I guess I'll just go to my guy in 7s. Well, do I want to save salary though? No, because I don't like anyone in 6s. Okay, I'm going Ricky Fowler.
Okay, I like it. I'll go Tommy Fleetwood at $7,300.
All right, I will. So for me, it's between Lowry and Dietrich, and I'm going to go with Lowry being able to raise his game here on this course. So Lowry at 7,400. All right, and then dipping down here, so we're each going to take one guy, or forced to, from the 6K range, where I will go Luke List.
Okay. I also didn't mention him, but I'm going to take Callum Tarrant at $6,300. Distance around the green. Let's go.
I genuinely don't like anyone. But you sold me on Ches Reavie, Byron.
Okay.
Just for course history, knowing that that's actually a sticky stat at Riviera. So I will go Reavie at 6,400. And then I have 6,700 left. So I have to pick another guy I don't like. And I will go, gosh, I don't want anyone.
You got
here.
2 6K guys?
I do have 2 6K.
Oh boy.
Building lineups with Rom,
yeah.
I'm telling you, it forces you into some weird decisions,
Yeah,
which is, it's basically like if you start with Rom or Scheffler, I think you have to skip the 9K range to get a competent lineup in, which again, I'm open to this week, but it just shows that they're very expensive. I will go, gosh, I don't want to waste too much time here. They're all bad. I'll go James Hahn. Sorry, Byron.
It's a good course history.
Yeah. I mean, Ron has taught me that course history in the low 6K, 7K ranges, that's what you want to rely on if you're picking a guy that you're not comfortable with.
Okay.
So I'm down on that. Taylor Montgomery, got $100 left. That's my lineup.
All right. Well, I have the magic number of 8,000 left. And so who else would I take but Adam Scott? So I'm going to round it out with Scotty.
Perfect.
So, yep.
You built that in.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, it's just luck of the draw.
So who's your lineup, Ron?
So I've got McIlroy, Cantlay, Fitzpatrick, Scott, Lowry, and Luke List.
Okay. I've got Scotty Scheffler, Tony Finau, Tom Kim, Tommy Fleetwood, Callum Tarrant, and Taylor Montgomery.
Rahm, Homa, Matsuyama, and Fowler, who I'm going to have a lot of this weekend. Reavie and Hahn is my line. I basically have the stars and scrubs line.
Yeah. Hey, you never know. This is a weird event, man. Things can happen.
All right, well, someone send me the link, and I will enter it wherever I need to, unless y'all remember and wrote it down. But whatever, doesn't matter. I'll pay whoever. Byron, I didn't introduce you properly at the top of the show, so go ahead and tell everyone about the Back Nine podcast, Back Nine Bets podcast, and where else they can find what you have this week.
Yep, at the Model Maniac on Twitter, Back Nine Bets podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the whole shebang, and then rotoballer.com. Everything I'm doing there is all online. So if you just follow me on Twitter, that's where you can find everything.
Ron, what else do you have for everyone at Betsperts Golf and the Betsperts Golf Discord, where we give our picks out?
So, yeah, we'll be continuing to fill those as we go. I like to wait a little bit with the DFS article and the ownership just to give it a little more time here. So that article will be coming out here in the next couple hours where I kind of give my core plays, a lot of which you already heard on this show. First round leader bets also coming out in a little bit here.
We will have guests coming back as well very soon. But until then, good luck to everyone. And remember, be a little bit kinder than what's required. We'll see you next time.